The cafe was nearly asleep. A jazz record crackled faintly under the hum of the espresso machine, and the city's rain pressed its face to the windows. Isla wiped the last cup, her hands moving automatically, her mind already lost in tomorrow's silence. Midnight was her sanctuary, the hour when the world finally stopped asking for more. Then the bell above the door chimed. A man stepped in, rainwater tracing the edge of his tuxedo, his bow tie slightly undone, his gaze sharp and uninvited. "One last coffee, Mrs. CEO," he said softly, the words landing like glass on tile. Isla froze. No one here should know that name. The record hissed, the rain deepened, and for the first time in years, she felt her past breathing in the same room. The stranger took a seat by the window, uninvited yet certain. Isla poured the coffee, her heartbeat echoing with each drop. He watched her with the calm of someone who'd already decided how this night would end. "I didn't think you'd recognize me," he murmured, and she almost dropped the cup again. She didn't, because she couldn't afford to. "Should I?" she replied, too quickly. He smiled faintly, eyes glinting with a secret. The rain grew louder, disguising her unease. Somewhere in that noise, she heard her old life calling. The one she buried under caffeine, regret, and sleepless nights. Minutes stretched into something dangerous. He spoke of coffee origins and the taste of truth, threading ordinary words with meaning she didn't want to understand. Isla's voice stayed calm, but her thoughts ran to the safe in her back room, the one that still held a piece of the past she could never burn. Lucien noticed her eyes shift and smiled knowingly. "You're still hiding something, aren't you?" he whispered, not accusing, just observing. The storm outside cracked, and for a moment, Isla wished the thunder could swallow her whole. Lucien finally rose, adjusting his tux as if the night had given him what he came for. "You make a good cup of truth," he said. Isla managed a brittle smile. "It's just coffee." He tilted his head, studying her one last time. "No, it's confession in disguise." The words lingered long after he left, the doorbell chiming into the storm. Isla locked it behind him, but her reflection in the glass door looked like someone still trapped on the other side. Silence filled the cafe like a held breath. The coffee cups cooled, the record player sighed to a stop. Isla sat down, staring at the untouched cup he'd left behind. A business card floated in the saucer, her old company's logo embossed in silver. Her throat tightened. She picked it up with trembling fingers, reading the line beneath. "For when you're ready to come back." Outside, thunder rolled across the bay, and Isla realized the past hadn't found her by accident. It had been invited. Morning light crawled into the cafe, pale and uncertain. Isla hadn't slept. The cup from last night still sat on the counter, the mark of his thumb faint on the porcelain. Every time she blinked, she saw his eyes, calm and knowing. She told herself it meant nothing. But the past was never polite. It didn't knock. When Mara arrived for the morning shift, Isla had already brewed a pot and was pretending to read invoices. "You look haunted," Mara said. Isla smiled without looking up. "Just tired," but her voice betrayed the weight behind it. Somewhere outside, a black car lingered across the street. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee hung like a warning. Lucien didn't come that night or the next, yet his presence lingered, the way strangers sometimes leave their scent in a room long after they've gone. Isla tried to lose herself in routine, polishing counters, measuring beans, pretending the rhythm could erase the echo of her name on his lips. But every sound reminded her. The hiss of steam became a whisper, the door chime a question. By the third night, she almost believed she had imagined him, until a folded newspaper arrived with her name handwritten across the front. Inside, a headline: "Vale Group acquires Moreau Technologies." Her heart stopped. She didn't remember leaving the cafe. One moment she was staring at the headline. The next, she was standing under the city's wet neon, phone in hand, calling a number she swore she deleted years ago. It rang only once. "I was expecting you," Lucien's voice said. "You shouldn't be." "And yet," he murmured, "here you are." The rain blurred everything. Her reflection, her resolve, the years between what she was and what she'd become. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. He didn't answer right away. Then softly, "Because the truth always comes home, Isla." Back at the cafe, Isla searched the safe she'd promised never to open again. Papers, flash drives, an old ID badge, fragments of a life she'd burned to survive. Her hands hovered over one file. A sealed envelope labeled Veil Group, Internal. Her chest tightened. When she tore it open, photographs fell out. Her signature, her company's offshore accounts, but not her handwriting. "He's framing me again," she whispered. But even as the words left her, she realized it wasn't Elias she feared this time. It was Lucien. By dawn, Lucien was waiting outside the cafe. No tuxedo this time, just a dark coat, collar up against the wind. He looked like a man trying not to be recognized and failing. Isla opened the door halfway. "You bought my company," she said flatly. He nodded once. "I saved it. You don't get to decide what that means." His eyes softened. "Then let me explain before you burn me too." The way he said it, quiet, raw, made something inside her shift. She hated it, because she almost believed him. For days, Lucien came to the cafe before dawn, never staying long enough to be comfortable. He'd order black coffee, leave a file, and vanish before the morning rush. Each folder peeled another layer off the past she'd tried to bury. Investors, shell companies, her own falsified signatures. Isla didn't ask where he got them. She only asked why he was showing them to her. "Because you deserve to know what they did," he said one morning, voice low. "And because I can't fix what I'm still part of." She didn't trust him, but something in his eyes said he wasn't lying. Or maybe he wanted her to think he wasn't. When the cafe emptied, Lucien spoke freely. "You think disappearing made you free?" he asked. Isla wiped the counter without looking up. "It made me alive." "No," he said gently. "It just made you smaller." She glared, her composure cracking. "You don't know what I lost. I know you didn't steal from them." "I know who did." His voice was soft, but the truth inside it was heavy. Isla stopped breathing. "Elias," she whispered, not as a question. Lucien nodded. The storm outside began again, as if the world itself was listening. The rain refused to stop. That night, Lucien found her outside the cafe, sitting on the steps, watching the street empty of light. "I should have burned it all," she said. "Instead, I ran." He sat beside her, shoulders barely touching. "You did what you had to. And you?" she asked. "What are you doing here?" His silence was long, deliberate, trying to earn forgiveness for someone who didn't ask for it. She turned, searching his face for lies. What she found instead was exhaustion, and something dangerously close to honesty. Later that night, Isla replayed every detail of the past she thought she'd escaped. Elias's promises, the forged signatures, the night the board turned against her. She remembered Lucien's name in the old files. He wasn't just an investigator. He'd been hired by Elias himself. The realization hit like ice. Her pulse thundered as she dialed the number had given her. "You lied to me," she said. His sigh on the other end wasn't guilt. It was grief. "I did," he admitted, "but not about why I stayed." The next morning, Lucien walked in as if nothing had changed. Isla was waiting behind the counter, her voice calm and sharp. "You were hired by him." "Yes," he said simply, "to find me." "And you did." "And then I stopped." She crossed her arms. "Why?" He hesitated. "Because I realized the one running wasn't the thief. The silence that followed was a blade's edge." She wanted to believe him, but the truth had already cost her everything once. "Then, what are you now?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment, guilty and in love. The morning Lucien didn't show up, the cafe felt colder. Isla told herself it was a relief, but the lie sat bitter on her tongue. The bell above the door chimed, and for a heartbeat, she thought it might be him. Until she heard a voice she hadn't heard in years. Still serving late-night miracles, Isla? Elias Crane stood there, perfectly pressed, perfectly poisonous. The years had refined him, not softened him. He smiled like he owned the air between them. "You look good," he said. And Isla's hand tightened on the coffee pot. "You look expensive," she replied. But her pulse betrayed her calm, beating to the rhythm of unfinished war. Elias ordered coffee like it was a negotiation. "You always hated sugar," Isla said flatly. "Some things don't change," he replied, stirring it anyway. He didn't look at her. He looked around, at the small tables, the peeling paint, the quiet simplicity she'd chosen over him. "So, this is your empire now?" he asked. "At least it's honest," she said. He laughed once, low and condescending. "Honest is a luxury, darling. You used to understand that." Isla leaned in. "And you used to have a soul." Their eyes met. Two old lovers dissecting the ruins of their ambition. Lucien arrived later that afternoon, unaware, or pretending to be. The moment his eyes met Elias's, the air tightened. "You two know each other?" Isla asked. Elias smiled thinly. "We have professional history." Lucien didn't answer, but the set of his jaw told her enough. They stood like opposing mirrors. One born of guilt, the other of greed. "You sent him," Isla realized. Elias chuckled. "Of course I did. I send everyone." Lucien's silence was a confession. The cafe suddenly felt too small for the three of them, and too dangerous for truth. When the cafe closed, Lucien stayed behind. "He can't touch you," he said quietly. Isla laughed bitterly. He already did. She turned away. But Lucien reached out, his hand stopping just short of hers. "You're not alone this time." She looked at him, eyes wet with anger. "You say that like you didn't help him destroy me." Lucien flinched. "I didn't know how far he'd go." "You always knew who he was," she said. "You just didn't care until you started to feel." He didn't argue, because she was right. The silence between them was an unfinished apology. Later that night, Isla found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside, a photo of her cafe, time-stamped 2 hours ago. On the back, a single line in Elias's handwriting. "You can't hide behind coffee forever." She stared at it until the ink blurred through her tears. Then, with trembling hands, she reached for her phone. "Lucien," she said when he answered. "He's watching." "He always was," Lucien replied. "But now, so am I." His voice was softer this time, almost a vow. And for the first time since she left her empire, Isla felt the fear she'd outrun coming home to roost. Days turned into whispers. Elias's threats hung in the air like smoke, but Lucien's presence became her armor. He was still a stranger she shouldn't trust, but he was the only one who looked at her like she wasn't ruined. They met after hours, words quieter than the rain outside. "You shouldn't be here," she told him one night. "Then stop letting me in," he said, stepping closer. The lights were low, her heart beat loud. "Tell me why you stayed," she whispered. He didn't speak, just brushed a wet strand of hair from her cheek, and in that silence, both of them made the same mistake. They believed the moment more than the truth. For a while, they lived in the in-between. Not lovers, not enemies, just two people, orbiting the same confession. Lucien shared pieces of his truth in fragments. "I took the job because I owed him," he said one night, "but I stayed because I owed myself more." Isla wanted to believe him, but the world had taught her that love and leverage came in the same suit. Still, when he looked at her, The years fell away. She wasn't the fallen CEO or the ghost of a scandal. She was just Isla, standing in the flicker of something dangerous and almost holy. It didn't last. Elias's voice returned, this time through a call recorded and left on her phone. "You can't rebuild what I own," he said, "and Vale will prove it." The recording ended with Lucien's voice in the background. Isla dropped the phone, her hands cold. The betrayal was simple, elegant, complete. She waited until the cafe closed to confront him. "How long were you planning to lie to me?" she asked. Lucien's face was pale, rain dripping from his hair. "Until I didn't have to. You already did," she whispered. "And you can't undo it." She didn't sleep. The city's storm became her soundtrack, every raindrop an accusation. By dawn, she'd packed a single bag, ready to disappear again. But before she could lock the cafe, Lucien returned, breathless, coat torn. "Elias isn't after your company anymore," he said. "He is after you." She stared at him unmoved. "You made that easy for him." "No," he said softly. "I made it easy for me. Until I realized losing you was worse." His voice cracked. For the first time, Lucien Vale, the man who owned his silence, broke. They argued until the rain ran out. Words became wounds, and in the silence that followed, Isla did something she swore she wouldn't. She reached for him. The kiss was a confession, not forgiveness. It was the collision of what they'd lost and what they couldn't name. When they pulled apart, breathless, he whispered, "I'll make this right." She shook her head. "You can't? Then I'll die trying." And for once, she didn't tell him not to, because she believed him, and that was the most dangerous mistake of all. The storm had broken, but the air still smelled of electricity and endings. Isla stood in her cafe, the space that had held her exile, her freedom, her lies. Every sound felt amplified. The ticking clock, the creak of the floorboards, the quiet hum of the espresso machine. Then came the faint scent of smoke. At first, she thought it was memory playing tricks, but when the alarms wailed, her body moved before her mind could. Flames curled behind the counter, small, deliberate, not accidental. Her name, her sanctuary, was burning. And somewhere in the chaos, Lucien's voice shouted her name like it was the only thing left worth saving. Lucien found her trapped by the counter, heat licking the edges of her world. "Move!" he shouted, grabbing her arm. The firelight carved sharp lines across his face, every muscle straining against the heat. "You did this!" she yelled. "Elias did," he coughed. "He sent the warning. I just didn't believe him." They stumbled toward the back door, smoke wrapping around them like a living thing. "If we die here," she gasped, "it'll be poetic." "No," he said, dragging her into the rain outside. "It'll be unfinished." Fire trucks came. Sirens split the dawn, and the cafe, her refuge, was reduced to blackened bones. Isla sat wrapped in a blanket, staring at the ruin. "That was all I had left," she whispered. Lucien knelt beside her. "No," he said gently. "It's what was holding you." She turned, eyes swollen, voice raw. "You don't get to make this redemption." His hand brushed hers. "It's not redemption," he said. "It's confession." His words lingered like smoke, heavy and impossible to escape. Hours later, when the crowd was gone, Isla found herself standing where her counter used to be. Ashes under her boots, smoke still whispering against the walls. Lucien stood a few feet away, silent, waiting. "Tell me everything," she said. His eyes lowered. "Elias needed a name to take the fall. You trusted him. I helped him hide it. Until I couldn't anymore." Her chest tightened. "You were the proof," he nodded. "And the guilt," she exhaled slowly, voice trembling. "Then this." She gestured to the ruins. "Is our penance?" "No," he said quietly. "It's our beginning." They stood together in silence, the ruins steaming around them. "Elias won," she murmured. "He took everything." Lucien shook his head. "He took what was built on lies." "You still have what's real." "And what's that?" she asked. "You," he said simply. It wasn't a plea. It was a statement, fragile and true. Isla stepped closer, close enough to smell smoke and rain on his skin. "Then don't ever lie to me again," she whispered. "Never," he promised. The camera would have lingered there. Two broken people, wrapped in ruin, finding the smallest flicker of light. Months passed before Isla could smell roasted beans without remembering smoke. The cafe had been rebuilt from its bones. Smaller, quieter, but honest. No more marble counters or luxury blends, just chipped cups and warmth. When the sign was rehung, she named it Ember. Some nights she caught herself glancing at the door, half expecting Lucien to walk in. He hadn't. Not since the fire. She told herself she preferred it that way. Yet when the clock struck midnight, her reflection always looked like someone waiting for a ghost, with gray eyes and unfinished promises. The world moved on, but the past had a way of circling back. Not as punishment this time, but as closure. One evening, as the rain returned, she found an envelope at the cafe door. Inside, a single coffee bean pressed in wax and a note. Midnight. Her breath caught. The handwriting was unmistakable. That night, she lit a candle, left the door unlocked, and brewed one extra cup, out of habit, out of hope. The bell above the door chimed exactly when it had the first night. Her pulse stopped. "You kept the candle burning," a familiar voice said. Neither spoke at first. Time filled the silence like a song, only they remembered. Finally, Lucien said, "You rebuilt it." Isla nodded. "Without lies this time." He smiled faintly. "Then it's stronger than it was." She poured coffee into 2 cups. Steady hands, deliberate peace. "No tux?" she asked. "I traded it for something real," he said. Their laughter was quiet, tender, the kind that belongs only to people who have forgiven too much and still choose to stay. Outside, the rain softened. As if the world, too, was listening, they talked until dawn. About what they'd lost, what they'd ruined, and what they'd found again. "Elias?" she asked finally. Lucien's jaw tightened. "He's gone, overseas. No charges filed. Just the kind of disappearance money buys." Isla nodded slowly. Let him vanish. Her gaze lifted to the sunrise, painting the cafe windows in gold. "I'm done chasing ghosts." Lucien's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then stay with me in the living." She looked at him. Really looked, and saw not the man who betrayed her, but the one who stayed through the fire. "Only if you'll keep the coffee strong," she said. When the clock struck midnight again, 1 week later, Isla stood behind the counter, the world calm outside. The bell chimed once more, though no one entered this time. She smiled anyway, poured herself a cup and whispered, "One last coffee, Mrs. CEO?" The title no longer hurt. It was a reminder of who she was and who she chose to become. As the camera panned out, the cafe glowed against the rain. A sanctuary reborn from its own ashes, where truth and love had finally learned how to coexist in the same quiet light.